Welcome to the Craftsman Founder Podcast, hosted by Lucas Carlson. Every week, we talk to founders, entrepreneurs, and those who've made a craft out of creating companies and enterprises. Listen every week to get ideas for starting, promoting, and growing your business. There are no shortcuts, just good old-fashioned hard work and craft. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this week's interview.
This is Lucas Carlson.
And hi, this is Eliot Peper.
And this is the Craftsman Founder Podcast. This week, we're starting to do something a little bit different. You might have been following along with us, and it's usually been just me and somebody that I'm interviewing, somebody that's influenced me. But this week, we're going to start something a little bit different. This is going to be a co-hosted show with my good friend Eliot Peper. And Eliot was on the show early on. He was actually the second person I interviewed on this show. And he's an awesome guy. He's just so fun. He's a great thinker. He writes startup fiction thrillers, which is great. And he's about to come out with his second book, and that's very exciting. And I kind of found a connection with him because I'm also working on a startup thriller of my own, and so we kind of have this fiction bond with each other. But the bond goes a lot deeper. We've really gotten to know each other, and I thought that it would be really great to spend some time before we go into the interviews, which Eliot will be co-interviewing with me as well, to really just chew the fat and spend some time thinking about the things that are kind of top of mind to us in the moment. So, Eliot, thanks for coming on the show.
You know, Lucas, thanks so much for having me. It was, I think the podcast we did together early on was one of the most fun interviews I've ever done. So I'm really lucky to be here, and I really appreciate you inviting me to co-host the show.
Yeah, so this week we've got an awesome guest, Espree Devora. Now, Espree is a lady who is doing amazing work in LA. She's really trying to help other LA startups do things better, understanding how to hire lawyers and how to basically do the nuts and bolts of getting a company off the ground. But before we get into the interview, I wanted to kind of lead up to the interview with some things that have been really catching my interest lately. And one of the books that I've finally gotten around to reading that's been on my list forever and is just capturing my imagination is the book Antifragile by Nassim Taleb. Now, it's interesting because I'd heard about this book many times, just as I heard about Black Swan so many times. It's like all over. But when I heard the interview that Nassim Taleb did recently on a podcast with James Altucher, it kind of the interview itself blew my mind, and the concepts he had really drew me in. And so then I picked up the book, and the book is even better than the podcast. The podcast is awesome, and the book is just even better. The concepts of Antifragile are super fascinating. Now, have you read Antifragile yet, Eliot?
I haven't. It's one of the ones next up on my shelf, so I'm excited to dive in. I've read some of his other books, including The Black Swan, which was his big breakout bestseller, and a lot of his sort of articles, but not Antifragile yet.
Yeah, it's and I do promise you that this will lead to build up to the Espree interview. But one of the fun things about the book is it starts out with kind of a question early on. Is what do you think is the opposite of fragile? Now, I'm asking you, Eliot.
Oh, okay. What is the opposite of fragile? So when I think of fragile, I think of something like china, something that's brittle, something that shatters easily. And so the opposite would be something durable, right? Like those jeans that I've worn for 15 years and still been ripped. Maybe that's flexible instead of being hard.
Yep, that's what most people think. And in fact, if you look it up in the dictionary, most dictionaries actually say the exact same thing. Yet it's wrong, which is awesome. It's have you read Peter Thiel's 0 to 1 yet?
Yeah.
That one says, what is it that most of the world believes and yet is wrong? This is one of those things. So you're right. A teacup or fine china is very fragile. It's breakable. A bar of titanium it's very resilient. So if you take a hammer to a teacup, it'll break. If you take a hammer to a bar of titanium, nothing's going to happen to it. But that's not actually the opposite of fragile. Resilient is just it's kind of a neutral thing. The opposite of fragile is something that takes a stressor, like a hammer, something that stresses it out, actually improves it, makes it better. It actually, the opposite is something that would make it stronger, make it more better, that it likes being stressed out. That, like the exact opposite, like the mirror opposite. Like resilience is actually in the middle. It's actually, it doesn't care if it gets stressed, and it doesn't care if it doesn't get stressed.
So would the equivalent be, if fragile is a china cup, would anti-fragile be a bicep, where the more you rip the muscle, the stronger it grows?
Exactly. Exactly. And in fact, it's so fascinating because it's a word for a concept that has existed. So the concept that everybody's familiar with is, if it doesn't hurt you, or if it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, right? Mm-hmm. Like everyone knows that saying, and grandmas say it all the time. But that concept didn't have a word before. Like it's in most languages, it didn't have a word. It's not. There's no word for it in German or French. It's like it's just a concept that didn't have a name until Nassim Taleb named it Antifragile. And it's such a wonderful concept, and it applies to so many things. Like jobs can be fragile or anti-fragile. So like a fragile job might be like a salesperson who has to interact with customers. Like if you're a salesperson, if your job is very fragile. If you say the wrong thing, if you insult a customer or punch them in the face, like you're going to lose your job, right? Uh-huh. So that's very fragile. Like you're very constricted in what you can do. There are jobs out there that are resilient, and so there are jobs like being a bouncer. And when you're a bouncer, you can punch people and you can say bad language, and it doesn't matter. But it doesn't help your job. It doesn't make it better or worse. You don't get a raise if you punch somebody. It's kind of a resilient job. But then there's actually anti-fragile jobs as well that actually benefit from chaos. So being an author is actually an anti-fragile job, because if you are an author and you go up and you punch somebody, it can actually be great for you. You can sell a bunch more books. If you start insulting people on TV, that could get picked up in the news, and you're going to get more publicity. The more crazy stuff you do as an author or an artist is actually better for your job. So that's an anti-fragile job. And I found the whole concept super fascinating. And one of the things that really got me interested was the finance side of anti-fragility, because obviously, like the banking system is fragile.
That's obviously Taleb's background.
Exactly, that's his background. He's been a trader for many years, and he predicted that the banking system was so fragile it was going to crash the system, and that's where he made tons and tons of money, is by shorting that the whole banking sector, and made a lot of money that way. And so you might ask, okay, so what does he say is a good investing method? And so to him, right now, kind of the very standard way to do a retirement investment, for example, is modern portfolio theory, where you have different class of assets. You have bonds and stocks, and the balance between them, and it's all about having a certain percentage of everything, and then rebalancing as they get out of proportion. And he says, but that's a fragile system, because even if you're kind of muting it, like if you're not 100% into stocks, if the stocks drop 50%, you're not going to drop 50% because you're not 100% into them. But you could still, like if you have some bonds, maybe your whole portfolio goes down 40%, but it still goes down, right? Mm-hmm. So it's still dependent on this system, and the chaos of the system affects your portfolio. Now, somebody that's giving you advice might say, well, you just stick it out. You just wait until it goes up. But what Nassim Taleb would say is that's not anti-fragile. Anti-fragile benefits from chaos. It doesn't get harmed from chaos. So what is an alternative? And the alternative is is actually quite interesting. It's a barbell investment profile, where you actually have the like a large portion of your investment is actually in the safest, most boring, like
cash savings.
Yeah, totally like money market or like tips, so that it goes up with inflation. And like you put 80 or 90% in that, and then the other 10 or 20% you invest in the craziest, riskiest things, the hedge funds, the startups, the things that could go 10, 20, 100 times more your money. And why do you do that? Well, what's interesting there is you think, well, that sounds really like risky, but you're actually capping your risk, because with a modern portfolio theory, your risk is really dependent on a lot of things, but it could go down quite a bit, and you can't honestly know how much it could go down.
Right.
If you have 80% of your money in the money market, then the risk is capped. You can't actually lose more than 20% of your money ever. So the stock market could go down 40% or 70% or 80%, and you can't lose more than 20%. And yet you still have enormous upside, because your 20% investment is in highly volatile but potentially highly profitable stuff. So imagine if you put 20% of your money in a tiny, super risky startup like Facebook when it was just starting, and then that just completely blows up and grows thousands of percents, and yet you only risk 20% of your portfolio, and that's what Nassim Taleb calls an antifragile thing. It actually benefits from the chaos, and that's I find that to be so interesting, and applying all those concepts, and being an author like yourself, the concept of authorship being an antifragile profession, it changes the way I think about writing books. Like the other thing he says, ideas are antifragile.
Mm-hmm. That was actually going to be exactly what I was going to jump in with. I mean, I think that one of the interesting pieces with, you made the comparison to investment theses and investment strategy, right? And making the comparison to not only being an author, but to really any kind of art. When you look at the commercial side of art, there's the artistic piece, which is the creative process, whether you're a painter or a sculptor or a writer or a musician, of creating the piece of art itself. But once it's been made, it's a product, right? So, and once it's a product, you have to look at and have a business thesis, just like those financial investors have investment theses. And I think that one of the really interesting parts in the creative professions is that you see sort of a similar dynamic to really early stage investing, right? Like you have, from Taleb's last book, almost all of the successes are black swans, right? And I think that probably in order to succeed as an artist, meaning like make a living as an artist at least, I think you really do have to seek out that kind of uncertainty to make sure that you have exposure to those exponential upsides. And I think that, you're absolutely right. In many ways, the more that, I find it interesting when I've talked to or read about many very successful authors of fiction, whether they're writing books or whether they write for HBO. One of the things that always comes across is that most of them have done many different things in their lives, right? Like they've had a dozen different jobs, and sometimes it's like as a trucker, right? Or like things that you would never really pair. And I think that speaks to anti-fragility in their own personality, right? Like they're throwing themselves into different experiences and drawing for that to create ideas that are themselves anti-fragile.
Yes, absolutely. Taxi driving is another anti-fragile job. It seems like it's a fragile job because you could have tons of customers in one day or none in one day, but on average, you're fine. And the thing is, if you punch one customer, it might not matter for your job at all. It's an anti-fragile thing because there's so many You have so many different jobs, just like those people you were mentioning as well.
Yeah, so that actually reminds me of a really interesting little story, and I'm trying to remember where this was from. There's an author, Bo something, I can't remember his last name, but we can find it and add it to the show notes. It's called Small Giants, is the book. Have you read it? Okay, so first of all, it's fantastic. You should definitely check it out. And I think that anyone listening to Craftsman Founder, this is actually one of the closest books to the Craftsman Founder ethos that I've ever read. It focuses on companies, it profiles companies. So Bo was a writer for, I think, Inc. for years. And so he knows, he has contacts at so many different small firms. And so this book profiles companies that are extremely successful and choose to remain small, right? So all of them have had the opportunity to go bigger, like to go public, to get acquired, to sort of like expand vastly beyond where they currently are, and all of them intentionally chose not to. Some examples would be Anchor Steam Brewing, which is a brewery in San Francisco that's been around for a really long time, and Patagonia is another good example. But perhaps my favorite, and what this sort of reminded me of, is that with taxi drivers, is that there's a tuk-tuk driver, and I can't remember his name, but he lives in Jakarta, Indonesia, and like tuk-tuk driving, like, have you ever been to Indonesia before? Okay, so I've been there a number of times, and I can tell you, like, the streets in Jakarta are chaos, right? Like, you step out, it's a war zone, just like, you almost need a gas mask for the pollution, and there are so many different industrial trucks next to bicycles. It's a permanent traffic jam, and there are thousands upon thousands of tuk-tuk drivers there. So completely undifferentiated commodity service, right? But this guy was so friendly. Like, he literally, when you got into the tuk-tuk, he would, like, give you a treat. He'd have, like, a personal conversation with you. And just because he focused on the human connection during the ride, right, he ended up with more referral clients who would only call him to, like, get rides to work or the store or home, that he couldn't, like, he never had enough time to actually serve them all. So he was this, like, probably the highest performing tuk-tuk driver in Jakarta, and it was for that reason. I think it's a really interesting one, and probably I can only imagine the lessons he's learned about humanity from from building and operating that business.
Yeah, that's so cool. So let's get into the interview, and the interview actually goes very long, and so I'm cutting it in half. So you're only going to get half of the interview today, and next week we'll publish the other half. And we'll continue this line of reasoning. But Espree was a wonderful, wonderful guest. She has so much energy. She is such a energetic person that is really always, like, thinking about how to help others, which is just a wonderful heart. And I really enjoyed this interview. What did you think, Eliot?
I came away from it really energized and inspired. I mean, I really want to be able to have an alarm clock that is a conversation with Espree, because I feel like if I woke up with that kind of energy and that kind of those kinds of ideas every day, there would be no limit to what we could accomplish.
Great. Well, without further ado, we'll have the interview. Thanks so much. This week is a super special week for a few reasons. First, our guest. Our guest, Espree Devora, is awesome. She's just really, really cool. The way I got to know her was kind of interesting because she reached out to me on a social network, and I had never heard of her before, didn't know anything about her, and it was actually, she invited me to join a productivity tool group on Facebook because I was talking about some tool, or I think it was a to-do list tool, and she saw that and she invited me in. And that was just the tip of the iceberg. We started to communicate. I saw all the stuff she was doing. She saw the stuff I was doing. And it's really been interesting because this is somebody I've really gotten to know through social networks, and she's really good at social networks, which is something I'm going to ask her about. But not only social networks, she also has discovered a really big life passion of hers, which actually happens to be podcasting. So she just started her new podcast. It's very, very good. We are LA Tech Podcast. And one of the awesome things, first episode, and she got featured on iTunes as a mover and shaker. So I'm really proud of her, really excited to see her success. Awesome to pick her brain. Espree, can you tell us about your background and how you got into things? Who are you?
Yeah, the first thing I want to say is I'm so excited to be on your podcast. For those of you who haven't had the chance to listen to other episodes yet, all you find is the most authentic, transparent conversations with these incredible guests, from like venture capitalists to successful business people, and you're like, and you, Lucas, are so just real. Like, you're about no BS, no, like, just this is the heart and sweat equity I put into building a company, and these are how I make my relationships, and let me share that kind of insight, that raw, honest insight with the world so other people could succeed too. So I'm really honored to be on your podcast because that's totally what I believe in. My background, yeah, of course, my background is that I started being an entrepreneur when I was a teenager, and a lot of times people ask me, like, when did you discover you were an entrepreneur? I feel I was born one. I don't think that, like, when I was, a teenager starting things, that I was like, I'm going to go be an entrepreneur now. I was just doing stuff that I liked, and that was technology and action sports and the internet. And years later, I found out I had a startup. It's the same way I found out I was a producer. Like, I was producing. I didn't know I was producing. I was making action sports videos for a number of years, and somebody said, oh, you're a producer. And I said, oh, what does that person do? They're like, oh, everything you do. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess I'm a producer. So I've kind of, like, everything I discover, and now I guess you'd call me a podcaster. It's like everything I discover doesn't come from everything I discovered that I'm passionate about doesn't come from I want to be X, how do I become it? It becomes like, wow, I really love this thing, and then, oh, that's what it's called. And so to deal directly with podcasting, being an entrepreneur since I was a teenager, there were so many lessons that I had to learn the hard way. I would spend tens of thousands of dollars on consultants or raising money or getting an expensive law firm and all these things. And as a new startup, at least what I found in my experience, is certain things are cool, right? Like, it's really cool to have a high-priced, expensive law firm, because you assume, at least I did as a new entrepreneur, that, like, that would equate to them getting venture capitalist money with me. And I wanted to be the Google of action sports. So I better get that really expensive law firm in order to one day be the Google of action sports, because I don't want to make mistakes whatsoever. And it's just all these kind of life lessons that I discovered other truths for myself. Those were just assumptions I had made that weren't accurate for me. And that led me to feeling really passionate about moderating panels, because on panels, the whole point of a panel is to educate people like me of, the different options we have, and that there's not only one way that's the best way. And I think in my experience, I felt, because I don't want to say what's right for you, this is only what I experienced for myself, was that I thought there was only one right way. I thought if I read The 4-Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss and I followed every last thing, I would only be working 4 hours, and I was constantly searching for that roadmap.
Me too.
The top, right? And the top thing that I discovered in being an entrepreneur several times over now is that we create our own journey, that my intuition is my oracle, that I have all the answers, not in an egotistical way. I think it's important to listen to what's going on, but you need to feel in your own body, your blood, is your skin boiling over some decisions, and that's how we discover what the right answers are for our individual stories. So that's where moderating comes into play. I moderate panels in order to, to inspire people that I'm not an expert, nor is anyone else on the panel an expert. We're only sharing our own stories, and that I want to inspire people to believe in themselves, that they have the answer. And a lot of new entrepreneurs are just afraid. I'm afraid every day. You guys, Eliot, Lucas, I'm sure you're afraid every day. You're like, I don't know what I'm doing, and I view success now. When I was 18, success was being on the cover of Fast Company or Inc. Today, success is literally just taking a step forward. Every day, just constantly taking a step forward, no matter what. And there's so much of that I've been doing with the podcast. So I spent a lot of time thinking about, like, what did I love the most in this world? And it was moderating panels, connecting people, which I don't like to be paid for connecting people. I like it to be really authentic. Lucas knows from, like, even the Facebook group, right? It's just, I like those mutually beneficial relationships, and obviously the world of startups. Like, that's always been startups, technology. So I was like, well, how can I combine all those things together? And I really love my action sports company producing quality content that's amazing, that creates this awesome impact, whether it be entertainment or education in someone's life. So I discovered this world of podcasting. I was like, oh, it's like moderating a panel at scale. Perfect, right? So then I did go about trying to figure out, like, okay, what mics do I use, and this and that. And what's been so interesting, again, is I'm discovering online there's all these blogs and articles and whatever about these $10,000 packages of these mics and sound studios. And I'm like, no. I learned this the hard way last time when I spent the $10,000 that I don't need all of that. So, like, I spent $25 on a mic, and I get a lot of amazing teammates off of Fiverr, which is a site we could talk about later if you guys want to. That I know we're going to get into outsourcing, and Fiverr is a fantastic.
I use Fiverr a lot.
Yeah. So, like, I just looked at all these alternative ways that were right for me, and I had this blessing of learning beforehand that I didn't need to spend a killing or follow someone else's success path, because the truth is, like, you could do every last thing Richard Branson has done. It will not equate in the same conclusion for you, because you're a different person in a different place in your life, in a different timeline. So we need to find what's right for us. And none of us, you guys don't know, I don't know, Richard Branson doesn't know if something's going to succeed 100%. Unless you have those psychic abilities, you just can't know. So all you could do is really have heart and true intent and passion behind what you're doing. One of my favorite books is The Alchemist. That's where I learned about that. And then continuously take steps forward. And I am afraid every day, but that's okay. It's about saying, hi, fear. Nice to see you again. I'm going to keep moving forward anyway. I think that a lot of people say, don't be afraid. Well, I'm sorry. Like, I'm a human being. I'm afraid. That's just the way it goes. But taking steps forward, that's something I have control over.
Yeah.
Maybe I can jump in here, Ed. I love how The Alchemist is the book you chose to mention, because that's actually a book that I always recommend to entrepreneurs. I think it's actually has so many killer lessons. And so, one question I have is, I think we probably all read The 4-Hour Work Week.
Yeah,
Like, I feel like it's a great way to share that dream.
Totally.
But like you said, it's really about stepping forward and finding your own path. When you have people come to you asking for advice, right? Like trying to say, oh, how can I get to where you are today?
Right.
What do you tell them?
Well, first of all, I do have that happen. I think it's the most awkward exchange because I'm not superhuman, nor is anybody, and that's the thing that I learned in going from becoming a new entrepreneur and growing over the years. That, like, I think when Tim Ferriss wrote that book, he was simply sharing a concept that worked for him. It was a way of thinking. It was a mind shift. And then people took it absolutely literal. Like, do you think that Tim Ferriss doesn't have a day where he's like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do with all my email? I'm sure he has many days where he doesn't know how to control his inbox, and then he reinvents himself for himself over and over and see what's best. Like, who I was before, and how if I like to wake up early and go to sleep late versus today, if I like to wait, like last night I worked till 5 in the morning and woke up at, I think, 11 a.m. And I remember there was a phase in my life where I was waking up every day at 5 in the morning to go to the gym by 6:30 in the morning. We go through different phases throughout our life. So he captured one portion of his life phase, shared it to the world, and now, I mean, I kind of feel compassion for him, because the whole like all his readers and audience expect him to stay stuck to this one phase of his life. It's not, he's a human being. So it's not fair. So when people come to me and like, how do I get to, you know, where you are, I do my best to empower people to just trust in themselves. I ask them a lot of questions about who they are, because they're not me and I'm not them, and I want them to find what's right for them.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Tim Ferriss also has an incredible podcast, one of the best podcasts out there, and often in his podcast, he tries to re-explain the 4-hour work week in that it's not about working 4 hours a week, it's about compressing the busy work you do into 4 hours so that you can spend the rest of your week doing more important stuff. That's totally. And he spends so much of his life trying to re-explain that concept to people.
Totally.
Kind of sad.
And you know, and there's portions that I pick from it, like let's say, here's a perfect one, right? So I do my best, and I'd say I succeed at this, let's say 90% of the time. It's a pretty high percentage to only have meetings on Fridays, because that way, like, I know on Fridays I can stay focused and have, sorry about the sound, and have meetings on Fridays. Sorry guys, I didn't expect that. And sometimes stuff will come up, like today it's not Friday, but I also don't consider this a meeting. I also know that like on Fridays, people will, like I'll be really tired talking to so many people. So like I know not to schedule something like this on a Friday because I'll be too depleted. But I mean, batching. So the point is batching. When I go run errands, it's like, okay, let me go run all the errands together. If we could just take concepts out, whether it's Tim Ferriss's book or someone else's book, and then apply those concepts to how they make sense to us in our life, we're going to feel a lot more empowered than if we're constantly trying to be someone else. And I think that's the huge challenge in being a new entrepreneur, or even like a seasoned entrepreneur. We always think someone else has the roadmap to treasures. And if we could just understand that that's not true, that we have our own personal roadmap within us, and a lot of it has to do with just trusting ourselves and kind of going through life's motions and seeing where they lead us. So
yeah, it's really interesting because I totally agree with you that I feel like there's two ways to live. One way to live is let the world control your time, and the other way is to own the time that you have.
Right.
And things like only scheduling meetings on Friday is a concept that so few entrepreneurs have. Is they actually can say that, and like if you enforce that, then you start owning your own time, and you're in control of it. I hate when people say, I'm too busy to read a book, or I'm too busy to learn about X, Y, or Z, because it's like that means that you're abdicating your control. You're saying that you don't control your life, that life is controlling you. And
totally.
It's totally one of the, everybody is kind of searching for productivity hacks. But like if they just do that one thing and take control of their own time, everything else is just a tiny optimization.
Well, I mean, look at Mark Zuckerberg learning another language. I mean, that guy's got to be busy.
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, it's funny. I've had this conversation recently with a few friends that we sort of hate the word busy. And I use it all the time.
Oh yeah, I agree.
It's such a disappointing word to catch yourself using, because really what you're saying is I suck at managing my own time. That's essentially the message.
Totally.
And I find I really like how you said, really encouraging people to find those answers within themselves, because just like we said, everybody is overwhelmed with the amount of content and everything that's out there, and such a large amount of that content actually is productivity hacks. So when people are busy, they're reading about how to be less busy.
Totally. I mean, I always say that we prioritize what we want to prioritize, right? So at this particular point in my life, my like transparency is like I am in a very busy state of my life, right? But I also where I'm making choices every day to be in that busy state. And like if I wanted to prioritize a friend or wanted to prioritize whatever it is, the truth of the matter is we can all prioritize our health, the gym, we make choices. They're actual conscious choices that we make all day long to put ourselves in the place that we're in.
Yeah, I know entrepreneurs who say, I'm too busy to read, and I always think of Warren Buffett, who tells anybody who will listen that 80% of his workday is spent reading. Like,
I didn't know that. That's really interesting.
One of the best investors in history, isn't a man who is back to back in meetings and talking to people and on Wall Street.
Right.
He's spending time. He's allocated his time to learn, and that's what works for him.
Yeah, or what is it? Russell Simmons. He says, if you feel you're too busy to meditate, that's when you need to meditate. Yeah. No, totally. Like right now, I haven't been making time to write in my journal, for example, and that's unacceptable to me. I mean, this stuff happens because we're all human, but I'm like, what choices am I making that make me feel as though I don't have time to write in a journal? Because that's the question. And maybe I won't, well, I haven't gotten there today, right? But like maybe that I'm asking myself that question, then I will get there tomorrow. Because there was, a few years where I had no problem writing in my journal every day. So what changed that all of a sudden I feel I'm too busy? For those of you listening, I'm doing air quotes because that's interesting. To write in my journal now. But yeah, like busy, I definitely think busy is a concept, not an actuality.
So you've mentioned a few different forms of storytelling, right?
Yeah.
You made action sports videos and discovered you were a producer. And we're talking about journaling right now.
Right.
But as you said, one of your recent passions and one of the things you're currently prioritizing is your podcast. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what
so cool.
What it's about?
Yeah, so it's the first podcast focused on LA startups, and as Lucas mentioned, it hit #2 across all categories in iTunes New and Noteworthy, which was insane. I didn't even understand how to look that I was #2, and then when I figured it out, I took like a zillion screenshots, even though it was the same picture over and over again. I created it because, again, it's an extension of moderating panels. I wanted this really cool thing happens. So do you guys know the site Product Hunt?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so Product Hunt is this incredible site to discover new products and be like one of the first to like really be on the in of what's going on. And a lot of investors and influencers follow Product Hunt. So on the We Are LA Tech Twitter, and I know Lucas was talking a lot about my social media interaction. On the We Are LA Tech Twitter, I have 2 Twitter accounts. There's We Are LA Tech, which is focused on LA startups, and then there's my personal account at Espree Devora. So on the We Are LA Tech Twitter, there was a company called Datzer, which is an LA-based startup. I didn't know them at all. I didn't know the founders, but again, that's the point of We Are LA Tech, to just be supportive. And I had submission rights on Product Hunt, which I believe still not everybody has. A select amount of people can upload different products to Product Hunt. So I uploaded Datzer, this app. Datzer made it to the homepage and then got investors because I took this action. And I was like, that is freaking cool, like that I could do this thing that's so simple, but because it has the right audience, it was able to positively impact someone's life. And that's where I think this We Are LA Tech, and it's We Are LA Tech without spaces, where I think this We Are LA Tech podcast can really be beneficial to the LA startup community, if not, outside of that, which I've been seeing on the iTunes reviews that people outside of LA are getting a lot of benefit. But what I see is like anybody interested in knowing about LA startups or involved in LA startups can listen to the We Are LA Tech podcast, know what's going on here. What that can mean is a LA startup that I have on the podcast could be listened to by an investor either in San Francisco or in New York or abroad or in LA or wherever, and then they could connect, and then that could create a truly positive impact. Or like We Are LA Tech helped somebody a few weeks ago find office space because, again, it's about connecting. We knew someone who had office space. They were looking for office space. So I see the podcast as like a mass connector of people to truly just create positive impact. And I want to create, again, I come from an action sports background, so I want to create exciting episodes. I've never had a podcast before. Everything's been new to me. I mean, everything has been new to me. I never recorded into a mic before. I didn't even know how to connect the mic to my computer. I didn't know how to record the audio from the mic onto my computer. Like, the whole thing was new. And I really just want to take my action sports background of like fast, engaging pacing and apply that to the podcast episodes that I produce. So I spend a lot of time on editing to make sure like the boring is like taken out. I don't want to waste anyone's time. I mean, as Lucas knows from my blog, Save Business Time, it's like I just don't want to waste anyone's time. I want everything to add value to your life as your life and listening. And I think I'm learning that as each step goes on. I was blessed enough to meet with Alex Bloomberg, who has a podcast. I haven't heard it. It is, I mean, you just have to listen to it. It's one of the best podcasts I've ever heard in my life. Just, type in startup and you'll find it. Alex Bloomberg was the co-founder of Planet Money from NPR, and he went off to do his own venture. He's documenting his process starting his own company. It's a very candid documentary-style, raw podcast that's told in a riveting, engaging way. And he's a master of storytelling. So I was able to meet with him to learn how to become a better storyteller, which was dynamic. And so I think as each podcast episode goes on, I hope it becomes more interesting, more engaging, and something to follow. If the thing that I've learned most from the podcast startup and from what I'm doing is the podcast startup occupies my brain space. And as startup entrepreneurs and as just marketers or whatever we are in this like tech world, we think about email lists, we think about Twitter, we think about Facebook, we think about Instagram, we think about Pinterest, we think about all this stuff. But how about occupying someone's brain space? When you're that good that like I don't need to be on your email list to be hungry to absorb more of your content, at least for me, that's when I think I will have won. So it doesn't matter how many people have subscribed on iTunes or Stitcher or my email list or have my phone number. They are thinking about me all week because it's that valuable. That's the kind of startup / content / person I want to be in this world, that I'm occupying someone's brain space in the most awesome way.
That's awesome. That's killer. One of my favorite things whenever I see you on Facebook, I'm always waiting for an update about your love life because you've outsourced your love life.
Yeah.
And I'm really curious to see how that's going. Can you tell us why you outsourced your love life?
Sure. Let's see. God, it's been a while now. I love outsourcing. To clarify what outsourcing is, I view the word outsourcing as delegating. A lot of people assume that outsourcing just means India. To me, it does not mean India, though I do have a team in India, I have a team in the Philippines, I have a team in New York. I have both domestic and abroad, and I think they're all wonderful. But so I saw Tim Ferriss gave a talk, and in the talk he talked about how he outsourced his love life. He contracted a bunch of teams from Australia to the Philippines to India to all these places, and they all had to go on his online profiles and set him up on coffee dates. I was like, well, that's awesome. Why don't I give it a try? Being that I'm really experimental in the sense, it's not even experimental because I'm not experimental like Tim Ferriss. I'm adventurous. Like I'm open-minded, And for many years, my number one focus was building my company, and I didn't think about dating. I was like, dating is a distraction. I don't want to be distracted. I just want to devote my attention to my company. So now that I've become open-minded about dating, I'm like, well, let's have fun with it. I mean, I'm not in a rush to get married. I'm not in a rush to have kids. I'm just open-minded. I just want to see what's out there. So I decided to handle it in an alternative way, and I hired a virtual assistant to go online. Just to be very clear, she did not pretend to be me. She was herself, and she would message people. She worked with me, so she was one of my assistants for my business. So she knew me well from a business sense. She knew my interests. She knew who I was, my personality type, and she would just reach out to people and say, I think you'd be a great match with my boss. And are you interested? And then they would go ahead and set the date, and I would just show up. And she would do it via Match.com and OkCupid. And I did not see what the guys look like. It wasn't, I think everybody has something to offer, and I wanted to stay open-minded. I think in this world, I remember when I was a teenager, there was this guy that was like super, super hot, and then I got to know him, and then I thought he was really ugly. And like I learned that like it's all like who someone is that makes them attractive. It's not their aesthetics. Their aesthetics maybe last 5 seconds. And so I really wanted to like just get to know people for people. So I would just show up and have a good time. And I love outsourcing my love life. I've had the best time with it. I decided to take it to an extra level. So Bobby Ann was setting up dates for me for a while, and then I thought, man, I haven't ever seen someone outsource their love life to Facebook. And like classified ads, people used to post those classified ads in the newspaper of like looking for a date. So I created a site using Strikingly to outsource my love life to a Facebook ad. So I linked my Strikingly webpage that I built specifically to outsource my love life, and you guys can have the link. I think it's strikingly.com/Espree or something like that, but I'm sure if you type in outsource your love life Espree, you'll find it. But anyway, and I placed an ad that goes to the Strikingly page and met people that way as well. So I've just been really open-minded about the whole process. I have, some of the, what's it called, objections, is that the right word? Some of the like criticisms that I get is I don't take dating seriously, or if I don't have time to date, like who am I, all this stuff. Listen, let's just be real. If I had to choose, first of all, most of these messages you get as a female, and and I don't want to offend anybody, but most of the messages you get online dating female are like, do you want to like go do something like not so appropriate, like on a first date, right? They're very dirty, racy messages. I really don't want to waste my time with dirty, racy messages when I could go be having dinner with a girlfriend, So let's just get that straight. So I want to like get rid of that kind of junk. Then a lot of guys in this day and age, for some reason, do a lot of back and forth without ever setting up a date. That's really annoying to me. If I'm open to meet you, let's go meet. What is it? And I'm not expecting some like grand date where they're paying for this expensive dinner. Coffee date's fine. A free date at the park is fine. It's just like, if you're interested in dating, like, let's go meet to see if we'd be compatible. So like, this is the kind of stuff that Bobby Ann like filters through for me, and then I'm able to meet these like really incredible guys. I met one guy in particular. We had an incredible connection. Unfortunately, he was in the military, and he did have to go back to the military, so he decided he didn't kind of like want to put the burden of a relationship on someone else. He didn't know how long he would have to be gone for. That was really difficult for me. He was an outstanding human being. So I have had great success meeting guys. I have temporarily stopped outsourcing my love life in order to grow the podcast. That's kind of where my attention is right now. And I did meet someone in a random place, so I'm seeing where that goes. But yeah, that's how. What questions do you have about it? I do highly recommend it for everybody. That being said, the caveat is I'm really open-minded, and I think a lot of women would not like not seeing who they're going on a date with first.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was mainly curious if you think that this is something that other people could have success at as well.
I do, but I think people get really fixated on looks, money, car, job, and I'm not. I'm looking for integrity. I'm looking for communication. I'm looking to laugh. I'm looking for ambition. I'm looking for drive. I'm looking for compassion. I'm looking for things that are way more important and permanent than money, looks, life, car. It's like you could make it and lose money like in the millions in a second. So if you have drive and ambition, that should take care of that. You can look a certain way and then you're going to age. It's just there's so many things that we base value on that actually are abstract and don't have value. So I'm looking for the core of who someone is. That being said, of course, I want someone athletic and all that because I like to be athletic. You have to share those common interests,
So I feel like it's sort of interesting because so many of the dating apps are almost like resumes. Like they're
Totally.
algorithm based, and you have all these questions. Like I actually have a friend in San Diego who recently started a new dating app that was trying to do it a little differently.
Right.
one thing that I would have a question for you on is basically you have found a way to circumvent that, right? Like you've taken all the crappy dating apps and tried to solve their problem through outsourcing and by sort of short-circuiting it and coming up with a hack.
Totally. And I love it.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. So is there a way to do that for that others could also take advantage of? Like, for example, how is your assistant able to vet for drive and ambition and all of those things you care about? Like, how do they filter and create?
Sure. Well, I think that goes back to hiring well. And so the same things, I know this sounds maybe funny actually in this order, but it's true. The same things I look for in my team are what I look for in, like, when going on a date with a guy or something, right? I look for my teammates having integrity, character, communication, drive, passion, all that. So inherently, they are what I'm looking for already, so they know how to spot it. I mean, isn't it we attract what we are? So, yeah. Oh, but a more direct answer, a little less fluffy, is Bobby and I were blogging about it for a while. So if you go to outsource, I think it's outsourceyourloveLife.com, I map out different things. And I have a bunch of posts in there that I haven't even published yet. But yeah, it's all there. Tim Ferriss's talk is there. The mind map I created is there when I was getting started. Yeah, outsourceyourlovelife.com. And if you have questions, dude, tweet me. Like, I'm so just excited about you winning this game of life. So just tweet at Espree Devora, and I'm more than happy to answer any question you possibly have.
Awesome. So what else do you outsource? So you mentioned Fiverr. So what do you do with Fiverr?
Oh my gosh, Fiverr has been amazing. Before I talk about what I outsource, I want to talk about how I view outsourced teams, because I think this is important. When we hear on Fiverr that it's a site where you could hire anyone for $5, or we hear about Odesk where you could hire someone for $1 to $2 an hour, and all these things, what I think happens for people is that they don't see these people as humans anymore. They see it as getting something on the cheap. Yes, you're getting something on an extremely economical price that's usually pretty brilliant, but they are people. And so I make sure to appreciate and show gratitude as many ways as I possibly can. I think the beauty in outsourcing/delegating, one, as a startup, because there's this whole debate, right? If you're outsourcing, then you're taking away jobs from someone in the States. It's not true, because like a startup person typically can't afford someone, so they have to get to that level somehow. So in order to get to that level, if you can, outsource/delegate your way there, and then you're at the level where you can hire that like $120,000 a year programmer and to have him sit in the office with you and whatever it is. But you have to get there somehow. But it's really important to me that everyone listening to this right now, as I'm about to share with you different ways to outsource, that you understand there's people at the other end that you're contracting, and they're people with heart, with lives, with families, and with problems that matter. And if you see them as anything less, please don't outsource, because that's just disrespectful. So with Fiverr, I've outsourced mastering audio. Getting artwork done. I got that intro on episode 2 of the We Are LA Tech podcast. You'll hear that there's this English woman speaking with this really cool voice. I was playing with like this DJ-esque thing. I don't know if you guys have heard at the clubs where it's like, DJ sketch coming live from England or whatever. And so I had one of these English women do that voice for me, and then I had EDM music overlaid over it also on Fiverr. And let's see, what else? I'm just getting stuff done on Fiverr. I'll like scope out Fiverr to like just see if there's something interesting. I remember once I had a video done where these kids did parkour, like this epic parkour for me on Fiverr, and I was able to have the company logo in that. And so Fiverr is great. I used to use Odesk, which is Odesk and Elance have come together. I've actually used both, but now they're one company. I hired a team off of Elance. That was actually the first team I ever hired when Elance was new, years and years and years ago. I still work with them today. They're based out of India. I have a team in the Ukraine that I found in Ruby on Rails forums for development. I have a team in the Philippines mostly that I found through Odesk. All these people, I view them as my teammates. I don't view them as like cheap contracted workers. They are my teammates. I'm constantly asking them what their goals are in their life. One thing that I do often is if it's within, if all that's within my budget is whatever I have the hours allotted for, then I find other people who also maybe want to hire them and that would find value in them. So they're, making that additional income in an alternative way. The way I like to outsource is I think different people excel at different things. So I like to pinpoint what exactly that particular person excels at and then assign them those specific tasks. So for me, I shouldn't say never, but it rarely turns into like a full-time position because they're only doing that specific task. So typically I'll make sure to like connect them so that they are taken care of in a full-time manner. Does that make sense? Did I explain that well?
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. One of the things that I actually use Fiverr to do the show notes for this podcast. It's a Canadian teacher who does this on the side.
That's amazing.
And she's awesome. It's so useful, and she's awesome. You should.
Dude,
I'll send you a link.
Yes,
of course.
Please. Yeah. So I do my own show notes. That would be amazing. Thank you. They take me over an hour.
Yes, they are very hard.
And on all my sites, you'll see credited to the different Fiverr contractors or teammates that I've worked with. I credit people all through and through. Like seriously, you guys, outsourcing is the most amazing way to be efficient, to spend more time with your family, to spend more time with your friends, to eat healthier, to have time to exercise. But understand these are people and teammates empowering you just as much as you have power to empower them.
That's wonderful. That's a great point, and I'm going to include the Canadian teacher in the bottom of my show notes to give her credit as well.
That's awesome. That's really cool.
Thanks for listening to the Craftsman Founder Podcast with Lucas Carlson. If you like what you just heard, we hope you'll pass along our web address, craftsmanfounder.com, to your friends and colleagues. Be sure to check out our archive section on our website for previous podcasts. This has been a Craftsman Founder production. Join us next time for another edition of the Craftsman Founder Podcast.